like many of my generation, I guess, by, playing games, buying a computer at some point in time, trying to figure things out, reading the manual. My first computer was a C64. So back in those days, there was a manual with it, which would kind of give you some basic idea about how to program it, pun intended. And so you just start typing stuff in and figuring out how things work, and then you either got curious or you didn't. And I got curious, and so I just continued, mostly playing at first, and then kind of starting to program. I think I must have been around. It must have been around 1984. So I was 20 years old. I was born in '64, so I was 20 years old. The first program I wrote that wasn't commercialized was for my father's company, a payroll program on the C64 in BASIC. So we would run his monthly payroll on the computer, and I probably could have taken that to the next level and might have ended up in application software instead of games, but that wasn't really where my passion was. So I ended up buying an Atari ST around, I don't know, maybe 85. I don't know, pretty much when they first came out, and sat down and started programming the Atari ST in assembler. So I started working out. My favorite game at the time was Xevious on the, I think it's a Konami title. It was one of the first arcade games, vertical scroller, where you have a ship and you fly through, and it's a vertical shooter, and it kind of got my interest, and I figured, hey, I'm going to try to make a game like that. So I did in my spare time while at college, and then I sent the game to a couple of companies, and I ended up getting hired by Rainbow Arts, and that was my first commercial project. They published it, didn't sell many units. It wasn't a big sales hit or anything, but it was the first stepping stone to kind of learn more about how to develop games, how to program games and develop games. But okay. It was all Rainbow Arts, Giana sisters. I mean, if it says there anything time warp, then that was just a contractual, something that was written in the contract that if Rainbow Arts publishes the game, they have to put the name time warp in. I don't know. Okay. I mean, guess it. He's the one who programmed the C64 version, which was leading all the other versions. He and Manfred Trenz, they both were put on the project to basically copy Mario Brothers. There was the boss at one time he came in with a Nintendo system with a cartridge, the Super Mario Brothers, and said to them or to us, I want that game on the C64. Maybe 3/4 of the C64 when the C64 version was 3/4 done. At which point in time I started working on the Atari ST and the Amiga version, so that we could have a simultaneous release. So I mean, he was a good friend of mine. So hard worker. There was always we had individual offices back in the day. Today it's all open plan and everything, but it was a status symbol for everybody to have their own office. I had my own office. I mean, shared his, I think, with Manfred, And then Chris Hülsbeck, who did some of the music, he had his own office. But Armin was a chain smoker. So there was always smoke coming out of his office, and there was always a cup of coffee there. So, you know, he was programming and smoking and drinking coffee, and I guess it caught up with him in the end. But yeah, those were some intense times. You know, in those days you could still smoke in the office, and we all had to breathe it in. But they were good times. I mean, there was, you know, we had a lot of fun for sure. I mean, everything develops, right? I mean, Giana Sisters was made by two guys, let's say Armin and Manfred, and it's very difficult to make a game with two people today. You could, but you know, it's you have to have bigger teams, which that calls for a different kind of management. You have external, you have freelancers, you have people somewhere half around the world, and so. I liked working in the office just for the social aspect. I think what we are being sold today with the virus going around, you know, that from now on everybody's going to work from home and we don't need to go to the office anymore. I don't buy it. I think that, you know, working in an office environment at least a few days a week, you know, maybe not every day, but has benefits, especially when you work in a creative environment and you need to bounce ideas off from each other. Like I said, I mean, we were just rooms away from each other. We could just step into each other's office and say, hey, I got a problem here. Can you help me with this? You can do that over Skype, sure. But, you know, the last 5 years, I've worked remotely with a team in Slovakia. And it takes time to even initiate, even through Skype, you know, it takes time to initiate the contact, and then you don't know what they're doing. If you look into the office and you see they're busy, you don't disturb them. You come back. In Skype, you have to send a message, and then the person is like, oh, where's that message coming from? Not a good time. So I think that working together in an office definitely has benefits. So I would probably prefer the old times, but I realized that we couldn't do, you know, the games that are being made today. It will be difficult to do it in that kind of environment. If everybody had their own office, really, I mean, here in the United States, in the US, it's mostly open plan. The French have adopted it, the British have adopted it, and I think in Germany it's the same thing now. You have open plan, everybody has their cubicle, and you know, back when we started, that was really frowned upon. We wanted to be in our own office, maybe share it with somebody else, but not to be in this huge, you know, where everybody can see what you're doing, and so different times. I did the Atari version first, and I don't quite remember why. It may be that I didn't have an Amiga at the time, and the company didn't have an Amiga. We had an Amiga 1000, I think, for a while when they first came out, but I think that was sent to somebody else to work with. It might have gone to Chris Hülsbeck. And for the most part, well, we had to buy our own computers. So the company didn't really provide hardware. So I think I started with the Atari version, and then I ended up buying an Amiga with a 2000, I think. And I was more familiar with the Atari ST at the time, so started with that. And then I was given 2 weeks or 2 or 3 weeks to come up with the Amiga version. And since Armin had only done most of the hard work, like, you know, the controls, and I mean, the control is really, the control of the character is really the most important part in a jump and run game. You know, the inertia, you know, the curves, you know, the path you take when you jump and things like that. That's really, and how the screen scrolls back and forth. So they had already experimented with this and had done a pretty good job, basically coming up with tables. So instead of calculating, you know, a sinus curve, they had a table, you know, 8-bit values that would tell you at which point in time in the jump, how high would you go? And I would just take that data and expand it to 16-bit, and voila, you know, I had my movement. The tricky part was the scrolling, because the Atari ST back then couldn't scroll horizontally, and it couldn't really scroll vertically either, but it was a little easier vertical than horizontal. So we had to come up, or I had to come up with a method to where I would switch the screen, but make sure that, you know, you don't run into an opponent. So I had some sort of a buffer, 1/3 to the right, 2/3 to the left, or the other way around maybe, so that if you crossed a certain X coordinate on the screen would switch. And it wasn't ideal, but like I said, the first Ataris didn't have hardware scrolling, so there was nothing really you could do about it. And then the next version was the Amiga version, and we could have done this with smooth scrolling. I mean, the Amiga did have pixel scrolling, smooth scrolling, vertical and horizontally, but there was time pressure to get it done. And since we would have to retest everything basically. If I had switched from the switch mode to continuous scrolling, we would have to test the entire game again, and there just wasn't enough time. So instead of switching it, there was a small animation, there was a small scrolling period, and that was it. And the game had to get out the door onto the shelves, where it immediately was stopped from selling by Nintendo. I don't know. We heard a lot of rumors ourselves. I don't think Armin would have known more than I do. This was Rainbow Arts was in Gütersloh, about, I don't know, maybe 100 kilometers away, from 150 kilometers from where the publisher sat. That was Rushware or Softgold, and they were making they were basically making the publishing decisions. It wasn't Rainbow Arts. That Rainbow Arts was a developer / publisher, but really the control was in Düsseldorf with Rushware, and any negotiations would have been held at that level. So I'm here, programmer. Then there was, or maybe I was development manager at the time, but I was here. Then my boss was here, the owner of Rainbow Arts, and then there was another boss, and I don't know. We just and I don't think, because it was a conversion, I didn't get any royalties. Armin would have gotten some royalties, and Manfred, I think. So they would maybe know a little bit more about it. I didn't really, I wouldn't say I didn't care about it, but it was pretty obvious, right? I mean, with a few changes, we could have made it into a fantastic game and not have peed off Nintendo. And to name it, the great Giana sisters. I mean, seriously, you know, I mean, Mario Brothers, Giana sisters. Could you? I mean, you're poking a sleeping lion. Don't do that. But that's indicative of how naive we were back in those days. All of us, management, development, even the publisher and distributor. Oh yeah, let's give it a try, right? I mean, you just change a few things, and nobody can touch you. But we weren't smart enough to do that. So Nintendo didn't have a chance, or they didn't have a choice. They had to stop it. It was blatant plagiarism. Well, I mean, we didn't have much time between projects. So if we had finished, and I'm just putting this together in my mind right now, we would have been already working on new projects. It would still take time to manufacture, to do the marketing, a little bit of PR, a little bit of marketing, and printing the boxes and duplicating the discs and stuff. So that would have been a month from where we had finished the game, and by that time we were already working on something new. And like I said, we were fully employed, so it didn't matter as far as that was concerned. Like I said, I don't think I would have gotten any royalties, so it financially didn't matter to me. With Armin and Manfred, it may have been a different story. I don't know, but you're talking to the wrong person here. So was it disappointing? Yes. But like I said, we were already working on something new, and that kind of helps them then to deal with it. And I think everybody could see that it was a dangerous game. So a dangerous game to publish it the way, under the name, with basically an exact copy of a game that somebody else had already done. Yeah, it wasn't the best feeling, but nobody was. I don't know. I mean, I wasn't devastated. I can't speak for Armin or Manfred. Don't have anything to do with Time Warp. But what I know is that basically they had learned a lesson, and they basically that's what they should have done with the Great Giana sisters. They should have called it Hard and Heavy and changed the characters to robots, and Nintendo wouldn't have had a chance to sue them. So basically, what Armin did, and I'm not sure if Manfred was involved as well. I don't I don't remember. They basically took the formula of the game, jumping, a horizontal platform game, changed the graphics, made a few amendments, improved on certain things, and like I said, but I had nothing to do with that. That's just my guess. I guess I know I remember talking to Armin at the time, and I know they were motivated by not running into Nintendo again. Yeah, that was 1988. So I had been with Rainbow Arts for 2.5 years, maybe at the time. I remember it was August when we started our first day working for ourselves after we had left Rainbow Arts. We made a round number 8, 1988, August 88. So 2.5 years, and yeah, we just decided that we didn't have family, we didn't have kids, no responsibility. We figured we're gonna try this, and because there was a lot of complaining going on within the company, within Rainbow Arts, as it is when you put a lot of young people together, and the boss is even younger than his employees. Nobody had any management experience, like formal management experience or business training, so it was pretty chaotic. And I would just say that's the result of, like I said, putting young, inexperienced people together. And when I say that, I'm not bashing the management or anything. I'm everybody, including myself. We had no clue. So there was constantly, I don't know, did you hear this? Did you hear that? I don't like this. I don't like that. I'm going to quit. Blah blah blah. And it went on for months and months and months. And today you would call it a toxic work environment. It was just really, I mean, nobody was motivated anymore. And because as an in-house developer, you do what your boss tells you, right? So I had the position of development manager. I was given the position of basically head of development at Rainbow Arts. And I think after, I don't know, 6 months or whatever, I said, you know what, I don't want it. This is just too much. This is just too much trouble. And, you know, if the management then goes behind your back and does things that you don't know anything about, and then people that, you know, are supposed to, you know, you're supposed to know more than the people that you guide. So at that point, I think I was the first one to really think hard about it and say, and decide, I'm going to start my own business. And Lothar at the time, I interviewed Lothar for a programming job while we were still in Gütersloh, at Rainbow Arts in Gütersloh. But he didn't join Rainbow Arts until we had moved to Düsseldorf. Lothar is from Bavaria, so it's quite a distance either way, but Düsseldorf is closer to Munich than Gütersloh it was. So he joined Rainbow Arts maybe a month or so, or after the interview, after we had moved. It was a good move for me because my hometown is much closer to Düsseldorf. It's basically 30 kilometers or so. And so we did this for another few months in Düsseldorf, and the company got bigger, and the rumor mill was just getting out of control. So there were 3 people at the time that wanted to leave and start their own thing. In the end, it was just Lothar and me, and so we started. We incorporated as Hertzler and Schmidt GbR, which is basically a personal. Well, it's the lowest kind of corporation level you can do. You don't need any, you know, funds or anything to set it up. It just sets you up for the tax office and that you can do business, and that's what we did. I guess we had some ideas of what we were going to do. Lothar started working on the tennis game. I did, it may have been Tom and the Knight or whatever that game was called. But I was also spending a lot of time working on the tool set, sprite editor, level editor, sprite routines, all that stuff, development pipeline. So Tom and the Ghost, right? Yeah, that's what it was. So the first year was basically spent without income. We had an office. We didn't have an office at first. We were working from home, and it didn't really, like I said, we were talking about this earlier, it didn't really work. You know, Lothar in Düsseldorf, me 30 kilometers away. And yeah, we would, you know, call each other all the time, but it wasn't the same. The motivation wasn't there. So I insisted on getting an office, and which is what we did. We got an office, and immediately productivity went up. You know, when you sit back to back and you have, you know, you work together, forget there's no server, there's no internet, there are no servers. You just take a 3¼ inch floppy and you reach behind you, and the guy behind you takes it, and that's how you exchange data, right? So if Lothar needed a change in the tool chain, that's how we would do it. And that's how it was done, not just we, everybody in those days did it that way. So, and again, there were good times, you know, no worry about the future, and, you know, no worry about, well, is anybody ever going to buy this, right? So we just kept on going and going, and send out a demo disc. maybe a year later, and to pretty much everybody that we knew of, Electronic Arts, SSI, Psygnosis, all the publishers in the UK, Ubisoft, one or two, no publishers in Germany, because there were none. And at least none that we wanted to work with. So we ended up getting a positive response from Ubisoft, and we signed a contract with them for the two games, the tennis game and the side scroller, and that's how that started. Well, it doesn't make any sense to me, if you know, but especially on the Switch, you know, which is Nintendo. But you know, in the end, I don't think it would have hurt Nintendo's sales back when the first Giana sisters had come out. I don't think it would have hurt Nintendo sales one bit. Because it's a different platform, right? People that had a C64, they didn't have a console. So, you know, were they in the you know, in a good legal position? Absolutely. But financially, I don't think it would have hurt them one bit. And so if you tell me, I don't know, this is the first time I hear about it, that there's a Giana sisters on the Switch, then you know, they're doing this because they want to capture a wider market, you know, a broader market. The Giana sisters is like, you know, everybody talks about it, everybody knew about it or knows about it, and so it's kind of like the revenge that now all of a sudden that the game is on consoles, when it really originated from a Nintendo game, from Super Mario Brothers. I still work in game development. I have a game that I worked on for the last 5 or 6 years that I've had a hard time finding a publisher for, so we've kind of put that on hold for now. And I'm working on something new, this time possibly for a console, maybe mobile. It just started a couple of months ago working on it, so I can't say too much about it at this time. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, you know, game development is a very, the whole business from developing to publishing, it's a very specialized business. And yeah, if there was one piece of advice I would give the majority of people that are in game development now, they should start looking for new opportunities while they're still on the right side of 50, which means 40, maybe up to 45. At past that point, it's going to be really hard for you to find another job, because you're too old to do something, you know, to do something new, or at least that's what people think. And the games industry spits you out. They choose you up, spits you out. As you know, we are trying to, or we are not allowed to, what's the word? Discriminate against color, religion, this, that, and the other. But I'll tell you one thing, nobody talks about it. If you're too old, if you're being discriminated against in this particular industry. In other industries, maybe too, but in this industry, it's rampant. I've talked to many other people my age, and they either have their own studios and kept track and are on top of things. But as an employee, a simple employee, you have absolutely no chance. You have to be very lucky to keep that going. So my advice would be, you know, at the right time, get out, find a job, you know, maybe in application software or database or web or whatever it is. And many of the people that worked for Blue Byte have done that, and are very successful with this. So, but if you miss that point, it's going to be very difficult for you to get a job. So I still love game development, and I still think, you know, there's something to offer, even from old people like me, dinosaurs like me. Let's not forget that the average age of players is getting older and older. So I think last year's statistics, at least from Germany, said that the age group over 50 or over 45 is now the biggest paying group of people that play games. So the generation that grew up with, you know, C64s, Atari 800s, and you name it, Nintendo systems, Intellivision, consoles, whatever you, or what have you, we are still around and we're still playing games. We're still enjoying playing games. And usually at that age, you have a little bit more disposable income. So, you know, it's certainly an interesting market. There's a market for the Kardashians and Bejeweled and all that stuff. But you know, I'm banking on the fact that, you know, the gamers that started, you know, in the 70s and 80s, they're still around and they still want to be entertained, but they don't want to play a Kim Kardashian, whatever, makeup game. So they want to play something different. Okay, guys, I'll let you go. Enjoy your evening.